and welcome to another edition of Lifting Lowdown, the bi-weekly industry podcast brought to you by Lift Hoist International. My name is Guy Harris, and I'm the publisher of LHI, the magazine servicing the global industrial lifting sector. Listeners will know that this podcast does not take the format of a straightforward interview, but invites industry representatives and figureheads to openly discuss leading topics in a relaxed and friendly manner. Let's begin. Sticking to the theme of remote communication, in this episode we are discussing e-learning. Training is a vital part of any profession. It not only improves skills and knowledge of the job or task, but also builds confidence and ability. This leads to increased performance and enhances effectiveness and efficiency. In the case of the lifting industry, and especially in the case of mobile elevated work platforms, training can reduce risk and help to save lives. As the coronavirus pandemic continues to restrict movement and with social distancing measures still in place, e-learning is meeting the challenges of instructing operators and personnel head-on. To discuss some of the benefits and drawbacks of remote learning, I am joined by regular cohort Rich Howes, who should need no further introduction, and Peter Douglas. Peter has spent over 30 years in the working at height industry. 27 of those years were with Nationwide Platforms, the UK market leader in powered access rental. He rose through the ranks in Nationwide to become the UK operations director, and while with Nationwide served as a council and board member of the International Powered Access Federation. Peter is now the CEO of IPAF, which is a not-for-profit members organisation tasked with promoting the safe use of powered access across the globe. Peter has a passion for safety and is committed to reducing accidents in the industry. So, welcome to Lifting Lowdown, guys.
Thank you, guys. Good to be back. They're coming round quickly, aren't
they? They do come round very quickly. And welcome, Peter. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, thanks for inviting me along.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us. So, before we get started, we were talking last week, Peter. Where were you when the pandemic hit? And you told me that you were at ConExpo. Is that right?
Yeah, well, a few people that I knew, a few members of ours dropped out the week before the ConExpo event, but we'd invested that much money into sort of stand builds and flights and accommodation and stuff. We thought we owed it to our members to attend ConExpo in Las Vegas. So we were out there when we landed on the Saturday. Everywhere was quite busy. The show was busy in terms of all the exhibitors getting ready for the show to begin. There was no real talk of the pandemic, and not until really midweek, until Trump announced the European travel ban coming into force that weekend, and then it was mass panic really from
all
that
hell
point.
Broke loose.
Hysteria ensued, certainly from all the European exhibitors, but it was a crazy sort of back end of the week.
Yeah, I mean, you were there as well, weren't you, Rich?
Yeah, and I think that the timeline just follows there with what Peter said. We were actually in, I think the Saturday prior to Saturday that Peter's talking about was about the 7th of March. And we had a show in Atlanta, like a material handling show. And so same thing really. Saturday, Saturday night in the bar, everyone was very cavalier, gung-ho. And even when that show started, they had a few exhibitors drop out, but it wasn't. And I think we transitioned from Atlanta to Vegas on the Wednesday or the Thursday. And by then it was it felt like a different world, and kind of, ConExpo and Vegas. By the time we got out of Vegas, I think on the following Saturday night, it really was a mentality of fleeing to the hills. In that week, it had kind of changed, and that was the last time that I saw an aeroplane, a hotel, a trade show aisle. So it served as a real kind of timepiece that week.
Yeah, that was a real marker, wasn't it? I guess both for you guys at least. But it was around that time, of course, when everything started shutting down and a certain amount of panic ensued. I suppose, were you having conversations about e-learning courses and the such on the flight on the way home, Peter?
Well, certainly, yeah. Prior to getting home, talking to the team, lockdown seemed to be inevitable. Probably just after we got back, I flew home on one of the last flights out of Vegas to the UK on the Sunday evening, and certainly on the Monday we were in planning mode for lockdown, what we were going to do. And obviously during those conversations, e-learning was amongst those discussions, something that we had developed for some time, but wasn't massively used by our membership.
Can I just to ask, just to give a bit of context here, Peter, while we're at this point, what is the role of access equipment in line with the kind of the key essential work that was taking place? Obviously, my wheelhouse is more kind of material handling, lifting technology, and obviously they played a massive part throughout the whole keeping everything up to speed. Is access equipment as essential, or is it certain types of work platforms? Where did your equipment kind of fit in the key work that had to keep going even during a lockdown?
Yeah, in terms of the essential infrastructure projects, building the extra hospital capacity in the UK, the Nightingale hospitals, but in other parts of the world, similar projects were happening. So in key infrastructure projects, access equipment is absolutely vital. So equipment continued to be used, and in certain parts of the world, actually, construction continued pretty much as normal, or as normal as it could be during lockdown. And even in the UK, in our sort of strongest training market, construction had a blip for probably a few weeks, but pretty much got up to speed a lot quicker than anything else. Although they weren't given key worker status, the projects continued because they were deemed necessary. A lot of the projects.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I recognise that. Going back to our May leadership edition, we ran a article on access equipment and the COVID era, and a really heartening story was one Dutch firm was using aerial access equipment so visitors, so relations, could go and visit their family in care homes. So they were literally being lifted up onto the second or third floor so they could have distancing conversations with elderly relatives. So that's just another aspect that people wouldn't necessarily think of, but another aspect that aerial access equipment really came into play during that initial phase of the lockdown. So
yeah, I did see a couple of articles on LinkedIn with stories like that. Nice, yeah.
No, absolutely. As I say, it was heartwarming. So, Peter, a quick Google search lists the most important benefits of e-learning as online learning accommodates everyone's needs and is best suited for everyone. Lectures can be taken any number of times, offers access to updated content, quick delivery of lessons, scalability, consistency, reduced costs, effectiveness. All of these things, of course, you are providing your members. They recognise all of that too, do they?
I think, look, we developed the e-learning program as it currently, well, almost as it currently is, probably about 5 years ago now. And the uptake of it wasn't fantastic. It was better in some parts of the world than others. But just to give you some numbers, we were pre-lockdown, our training programs were training somewhere in the region of 15,000 operators per month.
Wow.
And we were registering through our e-learning theory between 50 and 100 per week. That's all. So it wasn't a big percentage. It was available. It's been there for some time, but pre-lockdown there wasn't a massive take up. But since lockdown, since lockdown happened and continuing as we've come out of lockdown, we've seen a massive uptake in those programs, and we've enhanced them as well to ensure that the operators don't have to come into our training centres classrooms, into the main depots, given the risk of I suppose infecting the staff in those depots. Training is only a part of what a lot of our members do. So that we thought that was quite important to improve the programs to ensure that they didn't have to socially interact. We could maximise the opportunity to socially distance. So yeah, we've really pushed it through the lockdown period, the programs that are available, and our members have taken that up and really pushed it with the contractors who need certification.
Okay. I mean, one of the things I was going to ask you was that the practical side of things. I mean, theory is all very well and good, isn't it? But
yeah.
What you provide is a hands-on service, and people have to use the equipment prior to using it in a real life situation. So, I mean, how is the practical side affected? I mean, is it realistic to continue with the e-learning side of things?
Yeah, well, the practical side is much easier to do because it's outside in the main. So it's much easier to maintain social distance. We've issued some guidance, a couple of major guidance documents during the lockdown phase about reopening training centres, so how to run your training under the government restrictions in the various countries. And we've also issued some guidance on operating mutes during this pandemic and ensuring that, you know, the machines are sanitised, you're wearing gloves, all the sort of common sense stuff. If you can't socially distance, consider using a couple of machines rather than one if you can't socially distance on one. So we've given quite a lot of guidance to our members over the period. But yeah, you're right. Look, to do and that maybe this is why that pre this COVID period, the e-learning wasn't taken up massively, because you still had to go to a training centre to do the practical test.
Yeah.
You know, so why do the e-learning and then have to come to a training centre anyway? I think that there's a benefit in doing that post or during COVID, because you're minimising the social distance. You've got to go and operate a physical machine at some point, but you can minimise the time you're in other people's company and minimise the risks. So there's been a massive upturn since we come out of lockdown in May, and in some countries sort of June and beyond. As I mentioned, between 50 and 100 people per week were going through our e-learning programs in March. You know, that's now between 300 and 500 people a week.
That's a significant increase.
How are you managing this from a global perspective, Peter? Obviously, we're seeing the virus kind of peaking and troughing at different rates in different regions. So are you communicating to kind of regional heads and then it filters down, or are you trying to take a global perspective on it? How are you looking at it from that standpoint?
Well, our guidance that we issued was probably around the start of May, as people started coming out of lockdown, but not in the UK at that point. You know, it was more Northern Europe who were hard hit. Italy, Switzerland, Germany wasn't that hard hit, but those areas in Northern Europe who had it first started coming out of lockdown first. So we issued that guidance across the board, and then it was the UK, and then Southern Europe and other parts of the world. Technically, are still in a little bit of lockdown. But although life has returned to normal, economies have started opening up, but there are still some severe restrictions. So our guidance is more about when you are able. These are the things you consider. This is what you can do. So our guidance really is worldwide. We have regional representatives across the globe. We've got members in 70 different countries. So we have quite a lot of international reps that run their regions and support the members within those regions and countries.
Okay. On that subject, I know your guy Jason Woods out in the Middle East, because I worked with him on a conference out there, and so I told him that we were talking today and was sort of picking his brains on certain things, and it was interesting to kind of gain an impression, perhaps, or throw this forward and kind of plot the percentage of e-learning kind of in a post-pandemic world. And do you think that might look different region to region? Is there certain places where the percentage is going to be much higher and COVID would have served as a catalyst to that increase?
I certainly think that COVID has been a catalyst for the significant numbers coming through. We've not really studied it regionally. We know pre-lockdown Germany were big advocates of e-learning. The UK, not so much so. North America, big advocates of e-learning. But what we have seen across the board is significant increases. For a lot of our training centres, it was the only way they could do things. There are still some of our UK training centres now, because of the fact that they would have to bring candidates from outside into their rental yards, and rental depots and classrooms or meeting rooms are still refusing to do that and only offering training via e-learning. So it certainly served as served a purpose with those guys to continue being able to offer training. We've not really studied it, Richard, by region yet, but there are certainly some countries that still would prefer to do the face-to-face, and I get that. There's no substitute for being able to interact with other candidates and interact with an instructor and ask questions. We've done and encouraged people to do that in some of our training courses that we offer. Our MUPs for Managers, as an example, one of our larger UK training centres wanted to conduct that via Microsoft Teams with a live instructor, so that the candidates, and it was the contractor that insisted on it, the candidates could interact with each other and could ask questions. So we encourage that as well, and we've found a way to do a digital test for that course whilst an instructor is delivering it live via a format like Zoom or Teams.
Okay, thanks for that, Peter. I mean, you mentioned the MUPs for Managers e-learning course along with the MUP Supervisor e-learning course. Both of those are specifically designed for e-learning. That's the platform, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. I think you kind of answered this question partially, but I just want to get some clarity if you don't mind. IPAF currently has approximately 750 approved training centres worldwide. Is that right?
Yes, I'm not going to argue with the numbers because I'm not 100% sure. It's certainly it's a large number across the globe. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a huge number. Are all of those conducting e-learning courses, or are you sort of taking up the slack as an organisation, as an association?
They all have the ability. All of our training centres have the ability to offer our e-learning courses as well as our instructor-led courses. So okay. Whether they all take that up, that's another question. So the answer is no, they don't all offer it, but they all have the ability to offer it.
Okay, because a couple of things come to mind. I mean, the Powered Access license, the PAL card. I mean, you issue something like 150,000 of those a year, don't you?
It was 175,000 last year, yeah.
Wow, well, there you go. That's a lot of PAL cards. And that's also a lot of courses, of course. And then you've got the issue of language, haven't you? So you would normally fall back on your localized members to issue those courses and help you with the language barrier. How are you doing that internally at the moment?
No, look, we started with the e-learning course in terms of developing a standardised course. But that e-learning course was then morphed into an instructor-led training programme. So it all comes through our learner management system, and we train in, I think, through that system. In I think it's somewhere in the region of 14 languages. I may be slightly wrong there. So we've translated that material, and it's available throughout our entire network in at least 14 languages. But we train, I think, in 21 different languages.
Impressive.
So we're not reliant on our members. Those courses have all been translated. Legislation updated for the regions.
Tell us about the logbook as well, Peter. Some of our listeners will be familiar, others perhaps less so. So the logbook, if I understand it correctly, is somewhere where you enter experience kind of in between courses and refreshers, isn't it? So is the role of that, does that remain completely unchanged in an e-learning environment, because it's just a place where practical experience can be logged? And if that's the case, do you see that evolving or changing in a new look world?
Yeah, funny you should mention that. I mean, the logbook has been my view as a historic member of IPAF, and I run one of the largest training centres for IPAF for many years, every operator who passes an operator course receives the logbook. The purpose of that logbook is to log your experience when operating the different types of machinery you're qualified to operate. And the reason we issued that logbook is so when you come back to do a renewal course, you can show us that your experience shows that you've operated machines over the length of your card's validity, and you can do a slightly quicker, enhanced renewal course rather than go through the full operator course again. Now, the reality is they end up in glove boxes, drawers, bins, and very, very rarely do operators fill those in. So what we're looking to do is produce an app with a digital logbook. So let's not just waste the paper. Now, people have still got to fill it in if they want to go through a renewal course and log their experience. But let's make it a little bit more, a little bit greener. You know, not waste all that paper that people have been given. So that's something that we're looking at producing, and hopefully in time with the technology that's out there at the moment, using Bluetooth technology and the app, something that can be auto-filled in so people don't have to type in themselves what they've been operating that particular day or week. So yeah, it's something we're really conscious of. It's probably a waste of printing and a waste of money for us and our members.
Is that something you could tie into the smart card, do you think, in future?
Yeah, well, you know, we're talking about the app will host a digital PAL card. Yeah, that's the idea. That's the concept.
Okay, fantastic. And I mean, obviously, you know, our industries aren't necessarily considered the greenest out there. Construction being one of them, of course. But I mean, the environmental impact is obviously a huge benefit to, or one of the huge benefits that come with e-learning. Is that something that you're promoting as a sideline almost?
We're certainly promoting sustainability, and we're looking at the first thing that we're doing is looking internally. This is a project that we had for 2020 that's just been put to the side with what's happened, but it's certainly something we're looking at our own organisation, how we can produce less physical marketing material. You know, the app's just one example of that, but also the amount of paper that is printed for magazines, for annual reports, for all of this sort of stuff. So we're looking at our own house first, but we're looking at launching something on sustainability to help the industry understand the impact it's having and spread best practice amongst our rental company members and our manufacturer members as well going forward. It was something we were going to launch at our summit this year, which was intended to be April and then October, and is now pushed right out to next March. So it's something that we will be launching in conjunction with our annual summit next year.
Okay, that's good to know. We one of the themes in a upcoming lifting lowdown is carbon footprint and sustainability. So it's good to know that IPAF are focused on that too.
Yeah, sorry, Guy, I was just going to pin Peter on the app again. I'm not sure what the stages are of development at the moment, but do you envisage that, Peter, being a tool whereby there be information on different types of equipment and manufacturer provided information, or will it be more overarching than that?
It's early days. We've got a proposal. We know what phase one, we believe we know what phase one will include, but we've got 30 or 40 ideas for enhancements beyond that. So we haven't, it isn't approved yet. So we've got to get board approval as a big project for next year, to be honest with you, Richard. But we believe that, the most exciting thing for us is it will be the first time we will have the ability to communicate with users of the equipment as IPAF. That's what we see the sort of biggest headline being. Yes, it'll be green because there'll be a digital card, they'll have a digital logbook, a digital operator safety guide. We'll be able to give them news feeds, we'll be able to give them safety updates, our handy access poster campaigns, directly to the operators, but we will have the ability to communicate with them. That's the most exciting opportunity for me. But yeah, we're thinking about a site survey tool. We're thinking about familiarisation videos being part of that, etc. We've got lots and lots of ideas, and we don't want to get too carried away. We do want to launch the app in sometime in the next 5 years. So we're going to go with a pretty basic app, but it gives us that opportunity to communicate with the end user of the equipment, which is massive considering our single objective, if there was one, there's more than one, but is to promote the safe use of power access equipment worldwide. And what better way of doing that than being able to talk to the operators directly?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I apologise the line of inquiry, Peter, but it sounds very very interesting. I know the question was a bit left field, but I think listeners will certainly be interested in monitoring the development of that for sure.
Yeah, no, look, my only nervousness is I haven't got it past the board yet. So
okay, well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously, we're in the 21st century, and a lot of young people hopefully are coming into the industry, or certainly will be coming into the industry. So it makes sense to have, or to move away from that analog era, doesn't it, and bring these things online. This is not specifically for IPAF purposes, but generally speaking, e-learning. Now, obviously, e-learning, one of the benefits, self-paced learning, and you can do it at your own speed. But is that resulting in delays or pressures from employers? Have you witnessed any of this?
No, we've not really witnessed any of that. But one thing that's changed throughout this period is, so historically, if you did the e-learning, you still had to go to a training centre and take a theory test to prove that you've done the e-learning. So we've made an enhancement within the programme that it's got facial recognition technology in it now, so we can see the person that sat the e-learning and taken the test online.
Okay.
We've done away with all that now. What we have found is, because during this period, we've given people an extended period between doing their e-learning and taking their practical test, you don't remember everything. People learn at different speeds and take different things in. They've passed a test, but maybe they've not remembered all of that, because we've extended it from maximum 45 days to 90 days during this period. So that's the only sort of issue we've had. The other issue we've had, and it's an internal issue for IPAF, is because of the 8-fold increase in people taking the e-learning, is our back office support for candidates taking e-learning has not been adequate. We could handle between 50 and 100 calls a week or there were between 50 and 100 people doing the course. If we had 10, 15 calls a week, I can't log on, this is an issue, we could talk people through it. But when you've got up to over 550 in our peak weeks taking that course, we're struggling to handle those courses. So we're upskilling some of our team to be able to handle those extra calls and cope with the extra volume coming through.
That's a big volume, certainly. Did you say that you've done away with facial recognition?
No, we've introduced facial
recognition. You've introduced it, right. Okay, so that answers my next question, because I was wondering about authenticity, and does e-learning sort of open up the capacity for sort of ghost learning, i.e. someone completing a course on someone's behalf, which would be quite concerning?
It's a potential, and it's something some of our training centres are a little bit concerned about. Some of our instructors have mentioned it to us, but I think that we've just got to continue working on ways of ensuring that the candidates that are doing the practical have sufficient knowledge to be then let loose on a site, presuming they pass the practical, of course, because they've got to be deemed by the instructor physically capable of doing the practical test. We're making an assumption that, they've done the theory test. We've got a certificate which has got a picture of them on it taken at the point they passed the theory test. So we think it's as good as it can be, but it can always be better. So we're looking from a security point of view how we can tighten up there.
Okay.
Just to go back a step, Peter, I'm interested in the kind of retaining, if we can, the kind of camaraderie of learning. I'm running out of time to kind of mention that I took and passed an IPAF 3A, 3B a while back for an editorial feature. So let's get that in. And while I was doing that, what was kind of very enlightening about it, and okay, I was there as a journalist, so it was kind of interesting from a content standpoint, but actually from a learning point of view, particularly in the classroom, but also on the practical side, we bounced off each other. We learned from each other's right and wrong answers, and I think again, as a general point as well as an IPAF specific point, how can we kind of retain that kind of that kind of cohort mentality and camaraderie in learning as we move to a more digital environment?
You're absolutely right, Richard. I agree with you. Part of the fun of doing, going and doing some training is meeting new people and bouncing off people, being able to ask the instructor questions. And of course, you still get that because you still have to do a practical test with a group of people who've done the e-learning today. You can go and do a full-blown physical instructor-led course. One thing that I would say with regards to our e-learning platform, it is absolutely state-of-the-art. It's been developed by a company that understand how people learn. It's not like the old, I suppose, the initial e-learning courses that we've probably all done on manual handling or computer screen assessments, where it's just a PowerPoint that you got to read and then answer a few questions. It's very, very interactive. So, happy to share a link with you guys and go and have a look at it. But
that would be great.
Really, really, no problem at all. It's really interactive. People learn by doing, not just by reading and being told stuff. So, you have to give, there's little physical tests that you've got to go and do to really let that learning sink in. So we think we've got the blend right. But, I agree with you. Some people would want to be in a classroom situation, and that's still possible. We're not saying all you can do is e-learning. The vast majority of the training that is still done out there today is face to face. So, I agree, but I think that it's become more important as an option given the circumstances we're in.
I mean,
but is it your place? Sorry, Guy. Is it your place, Peter, to kind of suggest that and lead a market and say that we kind of need to maintain a classroom environment where we can, or is you as an organisation, are you entirely reactive to what members and the market wants to do?
I don't think we're reactive at all. I think we're at the forefront pushing what we believe to be right, but I think it's an option. Because I tend to agree with you. I'm personally, pre all this stuff, I would much rather go sit in a classroom than sit at a computer and do an e-learning course. Given what's happened, am I more comfortable minimising social contact at the moment? Yeah. So would I do the e-learning and just go to the practical outside where there's less possibility if it's done properly and done well, using social distancing, using sanitised machines? I would probably take that option right now.
Yeah, no, agreed, absolutely. I mean, it's just a common sense approach, isn't it, after all? I mean, only time will tell, I guess, as to whether e-learning will, surpass face-to-face training post-COVID. That's obviously something that IPAF's very much geared up for if that does become the preferred method. As Rich said, we are starting to run out of time, unfortunately, but it would be remiss of me not to mention the webinars. Brian Parker has recently been appointed Head of Safety and Technical, and he's conducting a free webinar with you on the 16th. Can we expect more webinars from IPAF, and will this become a mainstay even after the pandemic?
Yeah, again, it's something with the lack of exhibitions, shows, events. We've had to find another way of communicating our messages to customers. So this will be the one on Wednesday. Will be our on the 16th. Will be our third in a series. So we've already done safe operation of MUPEs during COVID, which our former head of safety and technical, Chris Wraith, hosted. We've done what's the second one on? Anyway, we've done a second one of the series. This is the third one of the series, and this is reducing accidents through intelligence. We're launching on the back of this webinar our new accident reporting portal, which is certainly close to my heart. So myself and Brian and Richard Whiting, our UK manager, are running that one. Our next one in October is on the rental reports. So looking at how the industry's done over the last 12 months, and probably more importantly for everybody in this current situation, trying to forecast using a lot of market data, intelligence, interviews with a lot of industry leaders, trying to forecast what's going to happen next year and beyond.
The magic, the crystal ball. No, great engagement and great initiative.
Oh, I think webinars are a fantastic tool, and I'd hate to give listeners the impression that I'm trying to keep us back in the more traditional ways of doing everything. I am passionate about preserving them to a point, but as I've said on previous episodes, for me it's just about balance. And I think I can't wait to get back to doing more face-to-face and do the trade shows, the conferences and that kind of thing. But absolutely, webinars I think are a great tool, and e-learning is going to be a fantastic component for us all moving forward. So to me it's just about balance, and that's where I'd like to see all our industries do a better job of just managing that balancing act as we kind of come out of this pandemic, hopefully sooner rather than later.
I agree. We would not be just doing all webinars. You know, if we ever get back to what normal is, it will be a mixture. And same with meetings as well. We've had some really, it's really efficient, isn't it, doing meetings in this format via Zoom, via Teams, and you can get 3 or 4 done in a day, whereas historically you'd have driven 3 hours to one meeting to drive back 3 hours, and you can do 3 or 4 of those in a day now. So it's about getting that balance right, and you can never replace, you know, I don't think face-to-face, but I think it will be a mixture of physical versus virtual meetings, certainly in our plan for next year.
Well, we'll put a link to that webinar on our YouTube channel so people can engage that way. Just want to say thank you very much for joining us, Peter. Really appreciate the insights you provided us today. Thanks again, Rich. Go well, and hopefully speak to you both soon.
Yeah, thank you. Great to meet you both.
Very good, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, chaps. Bye. Like so many associations delivering crucial services to their members, IPAF clearly has risen to the challenge, pushing through e-learning to meet demand for an essential industry in these demanding times. Obviously, e-learning was here before the pandemic and will be long after. It's bridging a gap, but with more exposure and experience, it is difficult to argue that it will not become the norm. With talk of removing paperwork and facial recognition, it is also interesting to consider what developments will be pulled into it in future. Once again, immense gratitude to Peter and Rich for joining me on this episode of Lifting Lowdown. As Rich said, they come round pretty quickly and are certainly stacking up. Feel free to leave comments or fire over questions if you have any. Your feedback and suggestions for future editions will enable us to make this podcast even more relevant and interesting. You can keep up to date with the latest industry news by visiting LHI's website liftandhoist.com. Thanks for listening, and look out for the next episode in a couple of weeks. Until then, stay safe.